Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome to another Heat Seeker Sports Best Ball Show. I'm Simon Edwards at PumaCom, and I'm joined today by two of the sharpest betting minds in the industry and hosts of the NBA and NFL rundowns, as well as Talking Touchdowns. Spread Astaire and Tyler Hicks. Spread, what's going on, man?
Man, excited to be back. I felt like I built a pretty good team last time we were on, Simon, and felt like we brought up some good points along the way. So we brought in Tyler this time, and we're going to see how we do with three of us in the room. Maybe Tyler snipes some of my players, but overall, looking forward to today's show.
What's going on, Tyler?
Yeah, I was a little upset I missed our show last week. I had some family stuff going on, but glad to jump on with you guys, talk some best ball now. Drafted a bunch of teams in the summertime, so it's nice to touch on some stuff and draft some teams with the fellas.
Tyler, do you think you got better teams in July?
I think so.
I almost do too. What do you think, Simon?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yep.
The thing that I tell myself, though, is to profit, all we need to do is win the people we're drafting against right now, right? Because if you advance just the first or second, you're guaranteed profit. So I just need to beat these guys with these new ADPs, but I feel like some of my July teams have more playoff potential.
Yeah, I think right now, basically in August, what I've noticed is that when I get to the 16th through 18th round on Underdog, like there's a lot less people that I'm interested in the player pool. Whereas in July, like I was flying through the drafts. I had guys in every round that I was interested in. But now, like when you're competing against people who are all caught up on the news and everything like that, and a lot sharper competition. And I noticed a lot of the players that I was getting in the 18th round are now going in like the 15th or 16th rounds.
Yeah. So we'll see how we do. But like I said, you can still be profitable if you just win your section. And then, hey, we never know. Some of those early ones that we like, they might not, they might not end up panning out. So we'll see how this one turns out today.
Yeah, for sure. And, like when we're playing in a large field tournament like Underdog's Best Ball Mania, like we're always looking for an edge, like against our competition, but also to, make it through to the finals and advance, like get a good score in the finals. And the finals happen in week 17. So one of the things that you can carry with you from your DFS knowledge is, just picking the game that you think is going to have the biggest potential for a shootout. So I brought on Spread and Tyler today as betting experts to kind of take a look at week 17 matchups and look at it from a betting perspective to see what we can find that might be overlooked a little bit or games that we might think shoot out a little bit. We don't want to draft the same players that everybody else is targeting. There's going to be a game that we talk about that kind of is the obvious week 17 shootout, but we're going to take a look at a couple other games that could be interesting in week 17. And we wanted to start off by looking at the Bengals at the Chiefs. And the Bengals are +3 in that matchup. They're playing at Arrowhead again. It seems like they're always playing in Arrowhead when those teams face off against each other. But yeah, they're playing in Arrowhead again. We have the risk of winter weather, obviously, with a week 17 game in the NFL season. And this game is going to be a game that probably everybody is going to try to stack. And I wanted to kind of get you guys' thoughts on this game. Spread, what do you think about the Bengals at the Chiefs? Do you think that this is a game that could potentially go under the total, whatever it happens to be when that total comes out? What are your thoughts on this game as a matchup and a potential stacking target?
Yeah, the interesting thing is even if these teams were not playing in week 17, we'd still be targeting their players, right? Because they're two of the most high-powered offenses in the NFL. Both Burrow and Mahomes finished top 5 in quarterback rankings last year. So the fact that they're playing each other didn't necessarily increase my interest in these teams, right? Because they were already kind of at the top of the list here. We're getting some interesting value with Burrow having that preseason injury. But, boy, this has become a yearly thing for Joe Burrow, missing the preseason and just coming out and being a stud. So I'm personally not worried about it. I was happy to take advantage of the skepticism around him And what that did for me is if you do land on that number 2 pick, and right, that's a 1 in 12 chance. But when you do, it feels like you can get Chase, Higgins, Burrow fairly easily, and you can get Burrow in the 4th round. So that's what I've been doing. Whereas I felt like in July, you had to get Burrow in the 3rd to do that stack. So that's one fun thing about it. And I think you brought it up succinctly in, does the weather matter more than the matchup when we're looking at that total? Because I kind of feel it is. It's a nice, crisp winter day and there's no snow and no rain, these games going to go over whatever total they put up. My guess is, what do you think? They'll put between like 52 and 55, Tyler? But if it's weather, it could drop down in the late 40s or in the high 40s. And we'll see how that turns out. But Tyler, I have to like this game, and I have to think, barring a weather disaster, which is quite possible these days, that this is a great game to target. What do you think, Tyler?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. It's the Chiefs and it's the Bengals. We talk about their high-powered offenses, and you touched on it. If we target these players all summer, you're normally targeting their main weapons on offense between the first 5 rounds on both sides, between Mahomes, Kelsey, Jamar Chase, Higgins, Burrow, Mixon. All those main guys are just within the first 6 rounds. So we were targeting these guys before. And as for weather, I think the only thing that really affects us here would be wind. If there's snow on the ground, these two offenses are still going to chug along. If it's sprinkling or raining a little bit, they'll still be able to throw the ball. So as long as we don't have crazy wind gusts that are just dragging the ball around, which even Mahomes and Burrow might be able to slice the wind with the way they throw the ball here, these guys could still move the ball. I think that total does come in around 55 spread. I believe that's what it's been set at the last couple times they've played over the last few years. And it's went over almost every time. So I can see it going over again. And we talk about their defenses. Chris Jones still isn't there for the Chiefs. He might not show up this entire season. They might trade him. So their defense could take a hit. And the Bengals are already trying to fill holes with young players on defense. We could see both these defenses take a step back. And this Week 17 matchup could be a high-scoring affair, 45-44, somewhere in that range, where the defenses just aren't as good as they used to be. So I could see it going over that total and love these players in this matchup.
Yeah, for sure.
If they don't bring Chris Jones back, that's a mistake. I know they absorbed that Tyreek Hill loss. They can't absorb the Chris Jones loss. What do you think, Simon?
No, I'm with you on that. Like, he's literally like the only guy that they have that's worth his weight on the defense. I think that they're going to be in a lot of trouble if they lose him, especially with the type of schedule that they have this season. He's going to be a critical part of them hitting any type of win total this season. So he's looking like he's going to be holding out for at least a few games this season. So we don't know what's happening with his contract talks or anything. And we just got wind from an early part of the season perspective that Travis Kelce hyperextended his leg and he might be out for this Thursday's game. Thursday's the first game of the season, and we just got that news that Travis Kelce might potentially be out this Thursday, which is going to suck for people who've been drafting him all summer. Like, a lot of people have been super high on Travis Kelce, drafting him as high as the 5th overall pick. And I know a lot of people who've invested heavily in Kelce, hoping that he kind of performs like he has the last few years, but missing that first game, like that's a big deal.
Tyler, so you think that they're going to be okay? What do you think about Kelce missing? I think it's huge. I was surprised when we logged on. The line only moved 0.5. I thought it was going to be worth a 1.5.
Well, the real decider is still on the field spread. It's Patrick Mahomes. I know Kelce's best tight end in the league right now, probably one of the best to ever do it. But it's Patrick Mahomes we're talking about. He could clear the wide receiver room and bring us 3 off his panel, and I still think he could throw for touchdowns against the Lions. So he's going to be able to move the ball. Some of those receivers are young, but you got a veteran like Richie James, I think, could be one of his main targets. There's all the rumors that Sky Moore is going to take the next step forward this year. And you got the young guys with a bunch of potential in Rashee Rice and Justin Ross. Justin Watson's also a guy that's there. And we've seen him use these other tight ends in Noah Gray. So I think they'll be fine. They'll be able to pad him. But if they miss him for the whole year, it would be a lot bigger than missing him, say, for the first 3 weeks. I think they could survive those first 3 weeks.
I'd be a little nervous as a Chiefs fan, just because I've talked about this on the past in some of these shows. Patrick Mahomes he's obviously a great quarterback, but as far as when it comes to elevating like other wide receivers beyond Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, you haven't really seen another wide receiver like elevated to kind of like a consistent status like that. You know what I mean? Like, so I'd be a little bit worried about Travis Kelce. I'm kind of with spread. I think that I was a little surprised when we heard that it only affected it by half a point, especially, given the significance of Travis Kelce in that offense and, like him potentially being taken out. Like that's a huge deal.
Simon, how far do you think he's going to fall in the draft right now?
I think
we saw this with Cooper Kupp, right? I'm getting him at round at pick 10. I've seen him drop all the way to 12. I mean,
I've seen Cooper Kupp going in the second round a lot lately. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Travis Kelce at least go early second round based on this news, which could be an overreaction. He's only missing one game of the season, but that's a big deal, because if you're drafting Travis Kelce, you're drafting him because you want that, like 100 points over the tight end too, basically. And these contests are often decided by 10 to 20 points. So one Travis Kelce week could be a 10 to 20 point loss. And if you're drafting him in that first round and you're losing 10 to 20 points, that could cost you an advancement.
I mean, we might see if I get pick 12, will I have a Kelce Kupp on the 12-13 turn? I mean, it's possible now.
There you go. All right, so another game that we wanted to talk about are the Jets at the Browns, and this is kind of an interesting game, at least to me. It's another potential weather game. We're talking about playing at the Browns. The Browns playing at home. And we saw what happened last year, like when they had to battle the elements. It ended up being like a super low scoring game in Cleveland. And this could be a similar situation, but I think in general, these teams are a little bit underrated this season. Like the Jets just picked up Rodgers, and even with picking up Rodgers and Rodgers having those weapons on the team, I think they're still a little bit underrated relative to the talk that some other teams are getting. And the Browns, people are still down on Deshaun Watson, obviously for the personal reasons, but also as a player, there's a lot of talk about how he still looks rusty and everything like that. Hasn't really done too much to alleviate any concerns in the preseason. So these are both teams that could kind of go either way during the season. I tend to think that both these teams are going to outperform this season, and they will be playing in Week 17. Inadvertently, I actually have found myself drafting a ton of players from each of these teams in most of my lineups. Like not even considering the Week 17 matchup. So if this game goes off, I'm pretty well positioned. But what are your thoughts on this game, Tyler? What do you think could be the potential of this game with the Jets being favored by 1 point?
Yeah, I mean, looking at this game, just like you said, a huge potential on this, a bunch of question marks between both quarterbacks. We need to know if Watson's going to show back up how he did in his Houston days, if Rodgers is going to snap back to his 2-time MVP winning years a couple years back. So it's going to be interesting. I think the Jets make a sneaky move. I'm going to call it now. I think they go in and they get Mike Evans and they go full on. We're going all in. We're going to try and win it this year with Rodgers. So I think they add a weapon like that to that offense, which could help dramatically. Where I think they take a step back, though, is their defense played lights out last year. Their defense could do no wrong. They made very little mistakes. Their corners were locked down. I think a defense takes a step back a little bit this year. It's hard to replicate defense in the NFL. Once some offenses have a little bit of tape, they find spots that they can get open on it against you guys. I could see the Browns doing that here. Amari Cooper is going to get pelted with targets from Deshaun Watson. And Njoku's going to be able to get his also. But I think Cooper's just going to be a target monster. He's going to be double-digit targets. Even up against Sauce Gardner in this matchup, I think he gets you 100 yards and a touchdown. I don't think Sauce puts up those same stat lines he did last year in his rookie year. And another guy I think to mention here, I wish we were still able to get him late in the second, early in the third, is Nick Chubb. I think he's going to be RB1 all year. He really doesn't have a backup. The dude's going to run the ball a ton by himself. There's no buddy to change pace with him. Jerome Ford, I look more of a special teams guy. And if Chubb just caught the ball out of the backfield a couple times, I think he'd be the highest scoring fantasy running back. So I could see him punching a touchdown in on the Jets. I don't mind getting him here either. And a very, very late round pick, I think you could pick in the 18th round still, Cedric Tillman. He's a wide receiver for the Browns. He's probably going to play wide receiver 3. We've seen a couple of these guys get banged up for them. Are we sure Elijah Moore is going to be that guy next to Cooper? He didn't really show us it at the Jets. I know they talk a lot about him with the Browns, but you got to prove it. Tillman looked good in the preseason, and as a late pick, I don't mind picking him up here either. So those would be some guys I'd be targeting in this one.
Yeah, Simon, I think these two teams that you've chosen here are the type that can make or break this contest, right? I think if you go throughout the industry, everyone's high on the Chiefs, everyone's high on the Bills, we're high on the Dolphins, right? I mean, these are, if they fall short, everybody's going to fall short on their projections, right? I haven't been consuming a lot of content. No one's told me to fade the Dolphins offense, right? These two teams, I think, could make or break us, right? Because you went heavy on these teams, and if they go through, you're getting them late rounds, right? I mean, you're great. You can get the Rodgers late, Lazard. I mean, Garrett Wilson, you have to spend a second rounder on. The Browns, Chubb, you spend a second rounder on. But for the most part, you can build these stacks fairly easily, right? You can get Cooper, third, fourth. Deshaun Watson, what were you getting? I think you got him in the 8th round the last time we drafted. And then you pick up Elijah Moore and Njoku late. So, I mean, you can choose your studs that you just like, your Tyreek Hills and your Saquon Barkley's, whoever, and then still get these stacks. Now, unfortunately, I'm not as high on either of these offenses as you are, but I'm not necessarily taking a huge stand either. I made sure to get some exposure in case I'm wrong. I have two concerns basically at quarterback for each team. Number one for me is Rodgers. I'm worried that Tom Brady is like LeBron James, where he has this thinking that all these people can play, this late into their career and still be as effective because Brady did. And I don't know. It's definitely an outlier. We've never seen quarterbacks at age 40 be able to do this. I'm looking at guys like Brett Favre and Phillip Rivers, who just fell off a cliff in their late 30s, right? I mean, the decline of Rivers from a quarterback that I really liked to barely being able to play in the league was so sudden. So I'm worried that Rodgers does hit that decline. And on the Cleveland side, my concern is I wonder if Deshaun Watson ever gets over all these allegations. I wonder how much that plays on him. If you think about it, before this came out, he was probably the most popular person every single place that he went. People were probably crying around him. Now I wonder if the fact that, hey, when he goes out, people might be a little hesitant to talk to him, right? The same waitresses that were so eager to serve him might just give him the food and run away with so much of his stuff out there. I wonder how much that mentally affects him. I felt that happen with Tiger Woods. As a guy that once the whole public kind of knew the weird stuff he was doing, it affected him. I wonder if Deshaun Watson ever recovers from him. So I do like what you did here because you're swinging for the fences. These guys have high upside. They've proven it. I mean, Rodgers, 2-time MVP. I would argue before all this happened, Watson was up there as the top guy, right with, I guess it would have been Mahomes and Brady at that point. So I do like the upside, but I can also see it going wrong because we know every team can't win every game. Every team can't turn it around. Someone has to lose these games. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes for both teams. As for their matchup, the other concern, of course, is I think that both these teams are still predicated on their defensive prowess. The reason people like the Jets so much is that they had Zach Wilson and Mike White starting, and they still did pretty well last year. And the idea is, okay, now we've upgraded our weakest position. We're going to let our defense carry us. How new school will this game be, right? This might be a late 80s, early 90s football game where the running backs take center stage. So I wonder how much throwing will be done in that one. But I love what you're doing here because I think there's these teams are evenly split. So there's 50% of the field like me that's not high on them. And it's not like the Chiefs and the Bengals where everyone's rushing for them. And if you are right, you're going to have a huge leg up, especially if you're drafting against me today. And I've kind of, after I got my early exposures to where I wanted them on these teams, I've kind of been shying away from both teams.
Yeah. And I just think with all the weapons that, Aaron Rodgers connecting with Garrett Wilson, he had Watson last year. It took Watson a little while to kind of catch on, but I think you're talking about another level with Garrett Wilson. And I think he has the potential to, kind of be the next Justin Jefferson. I know everybody's talking about right now Amon-Ra St. Brown being the guy that breaks out as the next elite wide receiver. But I think Garrett Wilson has a strong potential to do that, because we know how Rodgers likes to latch on to individual receiver and just kind of just pepper him with targets. I could see Garrett Wilson being that guy and kind of elevating into that top 5 wide receiver status. And right now, I think he's going at the turn of the first and second round. So he's probably going around ADP of 14 or 15. So he's a perfect guy to target if you're looking for wide receiver on the back end that you think can have that top 5 potential for sure.
Yeah, and I think Lazard is a nice little deal there. He's kind of like a cutoff for me. I think that's where that tier ends, right around where he's been drafting in the 108, 112 range. Then you're really starting to take some flyers, right? He's right around another team we'll talk about, Jameson Williams, right? Which
one weapon none of us talked about, I think it'd be good for the Jets, is the tight end Conklin. We know Rodgers loves tight ends just as much as he loves wide receiver 1. So you could see Conklin get a lot of red zone looks and score a bunch of touchdowns this season. So, and you can get him late in drafts. I don't hate using him as like a tight end too, if you grab a stud early.
I love Conklin in the late round. He's going in the 180s. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah. I've been drafting a lot of him too, Tyler. I like Conklin this year. I liked him last year too. He showed a decent amount of flashes last year. Kind of tapered off towards the end of the season, but Conklin showed his potential for sure. And I think this year, with a competent quarterback, he could definitely outperform his ADP. Like being in the late, 16th or 18th round or whatever he's going at. But also, like, the other thing that I like about both these teams is the divisions that they're playing in are much, much more offensively minded this season than they have been in the past, especially with the AFC North. Tyler and I were talking about that before the show, how AFC North I would normally shy away from in best ball, but now it seems like every team in that division is stacked on offense. And I think there's going to be a lot more shootouts than we've seen in the past when it comes with the AFC North. Tyler was also talking about how the Ravens defense is below par this year compared to where they've been in the past. But all these different factors, I think, just kind of play a role in the potential for these offenses to go off. And another reason why I'm stacking them when I can. I'm stacking the AFC North a lot more than I have in the past. I put it that way.
And the good thing about taking the stand on these, I would say, unheralded teams, you're not using huge draft capital here, right? I mean, like I said earlier, you can still have Tyreek Hill, Saquon Barkley, Ramondre Stevenson, and build these stacks. So I think, whereas, you take a Philadelphia stack, you've used all your draft capital. If Philadelphia doesn't, your team's out of the water. So you also have to factor in the fact that you're getting a potentially really good stack later in the draft, and you can still fill it up with all the studs you want.
Yeah, for sure. The other game that we wanted to talk about at the top here before we jump into a draft is the Lions at the Cowboys. This seems like a pretty good game. We're obviously playing in a dome in this game. The Lions are +3.5, and it's a Saturday game, I believe. So this will be an interesting game. Spotlight will be on these guys, and you can almost guarantee that both these offenses are going to come out to play. We do have concerns with Mike McCarthy calling plays over with the Cowboys, taking a more run-heavy approach, kind of taking the shootout out of it when they got rid of Kellen Moore. But Tyler, you were high on this game. What are your thoughts on this game, and how do you think these two teams would be for drafting just in general this season?
Yeah, I mean, just looking at it, you could, if you get that back end of the first round, grabbing CeeDee Lamb and getting Amon Ra with him and as the turn on the second round, I love doing that because you just look at it. They're both wide receiver ones for their team. For the first 6 weeks, Amon Ra St. Brown's going to be pretty much by himself. Across from him is going to be Josh Reynolds, Khalif Raymond, Marvin Jones Jr., just guys that really don't threaten defenses outside of just a deep ball. So Amon Ra is going to get pelted with the ball from Jared Goff. He's going to get 10-plus targets a game. And on the other side, I know CeeDee Lamb's got better weapons around him. We talked about Mike McCarthy wanting to run the ball, but Dak is going to look to his main guy in CeeDee Lamb. He still had a decent year last year, and Dak missed, 5 games. Dak's not going to throw as many interceptions as he did last year. I'm going to go ahead and bet his under on his prop because that number is too high. I think that offense chugs along, and Pollard running the ball versus this Detroit team in Week 17. Detroit's run defense was absolutely atrocious last year. We could see Pollard absolutely gouge this defense for over 100 yards, multiple touchdowns. CeeDee Lamb eats up the corners, has himself a touchdown, maybe gets over that 100-yard marker also. And on the other side, we know Dallas' defense is good. But Trayvon Diggs is a corner that likes to take a lot of chances. He will try and jump a route, and all of a sudden the receiver's gone with the ball for 60 yards. He's going to be covering Amon Ra St. Brown, so we can see that right on the other side. Jameson Williams will be back by this game, so there's a guy that could stretch the field. I don't think Stephon Gilmore's got the age or the speed to keep up with a guy like X, so he could break the field open, score you a 60-yard touchdown. I don't trust the Montgomery as much here versus this Dallas rush defense, but a guy like Gibbs, PPR, he's going to catch a lot of passes out of the backfield. They've already talked about using him in different ways. I think he's going to be almost used like an Alvin Kamara type. He could still eat on this defense, so I just think there's a bunch of weapons in this game. You do got to use some of the early draft capital to get them, but I think it's so worth it with these guys. And a rookie, Sam Laporta, a tight end. He's going to be tight end number 1 in Detroit. He's going to get all the snaps. We've seen Goff use guys like Brock Wright last year after they traded TJ Hawkinson. So love Laporta there too. I think there's a ton of weapons in this game. I think this is the one that wins somebody at $3 million.
Simon, so Tyler pretty much hit it on the head. I'm not going to reiterate his points. I'm just going to ask you a question. Throughout the industry, this is the chalky Week 17 game, right? This seems to be the one that people are targeting. It's been circled that we're not giving anyone a secret game, right, when we bring this one up for our show now. How do you think that affects the field and your approach to it? Are you worried about the fact that everyone's targeting it, or do you think that it's rather irrelevant and we just target it because we like it, just because we're going to target the Chiefs just because we like them?
Yeah, I think you just target it because you like it. We're kind of slim pickings for Week 17 games as far as games that we think are going to shoot out, especially because spread. I think we were talking about it last week. There was only like a handful of games that are even playing indoors. So we're going to have a bunch of weather concerns and everything like that. I think you just got to kind of target the games that you like and use your differentiation on the secondary stacks. Like Cleveland versus the Jets, for example, is a perfect game to secondary stack if you were building up a Detroit Cowboys stack. You know what I mean? So there are definitely ways that you can differentiate yourself in these secondary stacks that, will separate your team from the field. But yeah, I mean, if you like the Cowboys or the Lions from a season-long standpoint, I wouldn't shy away from it just because we think it might be a chalky game in Week 17.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about best ball is, if you got the guys, you got the guys as far as, in your original pod. So that can help you there. But I'm curious to see how many of those stacks are around in Week 17 or if our priors get completely obliterated by the time we get to that point of the season.
Yeah, that's what I love about best ball is like everybody feels like they drafted the league winner until you get to like mid-season and you're looking at your we're half.
A lot of it's going to be injuries, right? I mean, how many teams, right? How many Kelsey Mahomes stacks am I going? Boy, this isn't as exciting as it was yesterday.
I can tell you the past 2 seasons have been brutal for me with injuries. Last year in particular, like last year was the first year that Underdog was kind of tracking like top 100 teams overall throughout the season because they were doing a season-long winner. And probably about week 9, I had about 3 in that top 100, and then Breece Hall went down, and Marquise Brown went down. I had these guys that were going off. You know, you get a couple injuries like that. I went from having 3 teams in the top 100 to having like not even close. You know, like, and I ended up having like probably the worst advance rate that I've had like in years last year. So, I mean, it's a long season. It can look great, like even as far as heading into the middle of the season, but then everything can fall apart easily. It's a difficult game to play. And that's where a lot of people, talk about diversity and making sure you're diversifying your player pool and everything like that, just because it's a long season. And with NFL, especially, like, injuries are always going to be a concern, and they're always going to be there to derail you when you think that you're doing pretty well, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's wild how that works. I too was bit by that Breece Hall injury bug last year. I felt like that was one of my best draft picks, getting him a little later, and that knocked us out. So there is that randomness that the injuries provide, which is tough, right? And it feels like at this point we're getting a lot of sharp drafters, a lot of optimal stuff. So there will be some luck involved in who advances out of these pods.
Yeah. So I think we can take this opportunity maybe to jump into a draft here. If you guys are queued up, I'll jump in first and make sure that there's enough room for all of us.
All right.
Just let me know when you guys are ready.
I'm ready.
Cool. I'm going to jump in. 8 more to start. Jump in, guys. And I'll take this opportunity, too, to ask the audience to please like and subscribe on our channel and video. The more people that we can get to subscribe, the more great content that we can put out. Going to be focused heavily on Showdown throughout the season this year. Showdown is probably my strongest game personally, and that's the content that I'll feel most comfortable producing. So I'm going to have a heavy focus on Showdown. You'll see some games that you won't normally see people doing content for. I'll be picking random Showdown games in addition to the main Showdown games as well. And Spread and Tyler, they do a show called The Rundown. When you guys talk a little bit about The Rundown and where people might be able to check it out.
You want me to promote it, Spread, or you got it?
Yeah, you promote it, Tyler. Let's hear it.
Yeah, I mean, we do an NBA rundown on a show called Talking Touchdowns. The Talking Touchdowns is, of course, the football show. We go through the whole list of games. We give you all of our picks, where we land on the games, and even some long shots. And we do that every week. We do one show early in the week. Monday is a review show after the Sunday games, give you some Monday night breakdowns. And then we'll do a show on Wednesday with our girl Meg over at Fanspeak. We'll be doing that show, breaking down the Thursday game, giving some picks we like in that game. And then we'll be doing a Sunday morning show over on our Gather Sports Kegs YouTube channel. And we'll be breaking down Sunday morning slates with all the injury news, bets we like as we're playing them due to the injury news. Guys go out. We could bet some props on some other guys. They're going to get increased usage. And then our moneymaker spread, the NBA rundown. We do that 5 days a week. We do a whole playbook on the NBA with projections. We were up 41 units last year. I think we're going to absolutely crush this NBA season again this year. So definitely subscribe to those YouTube channels and just follow all the shows. We're going to be picking winners all year for you guys.
Sounds great. Yeah, and Meg's really good at she's good at best ball and Showdown too. So definitely check out her channel for sure. Oh, it looks like I got a decent spot here. I'm actually okay. I'm drafting now. There you see Travis Kelce.
How far will he drop?
Yeah, we're gonna find out. We'll find out how far he drops. I'm gonna go with Stephon Diggs. I was debating on Amon-Ra there. I went with Stephon Diggs. Man, Diggs seems a little bit underrated this season. He had some issues in the preseason, some attitude concerns or whatever. But he's a wide receiver. Wide receivers always have have moments like that. I'm not concerned with it. I think Diggs is a hard worker. He's a good teammate, and I think him and Josh Allen would have alleviated anything they had between them.
Yeah, love the Diggs pick.
I want my wide receivers to be divas, to be fair.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Yep.
I want guys out there that think they're the best that win every route.
What top receiver wasn't a diva? I mean,
yep.
Jerry Rice, Randy Moss, AB. I mean,
Jerry Rice was not.
The first guy you get to that wasn't really like a diva is Larry Fitzgerald. That was the only guy that kept his mouth shut, went out and just caught the ball and played football.
Yeah. Yep. Maybe some Calvin Johnson too, huh?
Yep.
Yeah, Calvin Johnson was up there. He never really got to experience winning though, so that was a big thing in him not being a diva.
So with Tyler, you drafted CeeDee Lamb, so it looks like you might be headed towards that stack that we were talking about at the top, or at least focusing on the Cowboys there. Spread, who did you draft in your first pick?
So I got a chance to up my McCaffrey exposure. I haven't been that high on him this year, but we've talked about it. At this point in the year, when we're drafting, it almost feels like we're evening out our exposures rather than picking my favorite guy, right? So, like, if this is my first draft of the year, I probably would have got Tyreek Hill there. But I have so much Tyreek Hill already, and we talked about right before we started the draft how injuries can throw everything. So I don't want to have 50% of my team's dead if Tyreek Hill goes down in week 2 or something, right? So I'd like to add some McCaffrey exposure in here, and he's consistently been a great person in fantasy. So I'm happy with that. I see. Who did Tyler get? So Tyler started. Did you get a Dallas stack, Tyler?
I went with the Dallas stack. I was contemplating if Kelsey wouldn't have went the pick before me, that would have been my pick.
Yeah.
I couldn't pull the trigger on Cooper Kupp because I have a bad feeling that injury is a lot worse than they are saying. When you're visiting with specialists, I think he's going to, even if he shows back up, I think it's like, oh, you get 2-3 weeks out of him, and now he's back on the bench.
Yeah, that's tough.
Out of state specialist too. He traveled to Minnesota for that.
I mean, there goes Olave off the board before him, Devontae Smith before him, Calvin Ridley before him. He's going to sit on this board for a minute, fellas.
He might not get past me.
Well, I figured that. You don't even let JT get past you, and he might not play a game this year.
So I went with Devontae Smith. I picked him over Higgins. I'm kind of evening my exposure between Smith and Higgins, but I really don't have a solid read on which one of those guys will outperform the other. But I do lean towards Smith because I think he has the potential to be the number one receiver on that team. Much less a wide receiver one in general. So I think that Smith is a good pickup late in the second round there.
Love that pick. I think because the way I look at Higgins is a bona fide 2 with Chase on the other side. Mm-hmm. I think in Philly, you could watch just season after season. It's like, oh, this is A.J. Brown's year. Like last year, catches all the touchdowns, all the yards. And this year could just be Devontae's just breakout year. He scores all the touchdowns, has all the yards. You just watch him flip-flop year after year. So love that call on Devontae Smith.
Now, Spread, we got you coming up. Spread went with Cooper Kupp. He's got
Kupp. I was gambling.
So what are you targeting here, Spread, for your third pick?
I'm going to go either quarterback T. Higgins or Jahmyr Gibbs. If I go with either of those, my wide receivers could be thin. I think because I went Kupp, I pigeonholed myself into a wide receiver pick with the idea that he is going to miss multiple weeks. So I'm going to need a lot of good wide receivers there. And obviously I'm hoping that he's back and he's healthy for the stretch run of that season by taking Kupp. So I went T. Higgins.
Gotcha. So we were right with Kelsey. He made it to the second round. I'm looking at it now. He was the 15th pick off the board. So right at the top of the round there. And that took a lot less time to materialize than Cooper Kupp because Cooper Kupp got hurt and it took him a little while to get to the second round. All right.
I think the idea is he's going to be if he does play, he's going to be such a target monster.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, who becomes the number one? Van Jefferson? Tyler Higbee. I mean, that's
they have the
going to
rookie
be a
there.
rough scene there.
What's that guy's name?
Pakula or something?
Puka or something?
Puka Nuka.
Yeah.
That's what me and all my buddies have been calling him.
Yeah, he's a guy that might be interesting in those late rounds because he's by default he's going to have a decent workload, you'd think. And then of course some random guy will end up being that top target in the offense over there.
I'm going to take a receiver we talked about. I'm going to go with Amari Cooper.
Nice. I went with Josh Allen with my next pick. I got the Allen Diggs stack with Devontae Smith. Tyler just went with
Diggs and Devontae. You kind of pigeoned yourself there. You wanted to. I mean, you pretty much had to go Hurts Allen, right? One of the two. And I saw Hurts was off the board before you picked, right? So maybe
Hurts.
They were both there. Who would you have taken?
That's one that I would probably try to evenly distribute my exposure to, and I do have I think more Allen already, so I probably would have gone with a Hurts there. That decision like that, like my top, I have more exposure to because I don't really have a preference on either of those quarterbacks.
So I like Allen better there. That's why I was asking. And obviously at this point we are evening out our exposures. Like I said, I probably like Tyreek a little better than McCaffrey, but I'm evening out exposure there. But you know, if it's just a one team draft, I think he's got a good chance to be the top scoring player in fantasy this year.
Yeah. He's always got that upside. And the thing with Hurts too is Hurts is coming off of a monster season. And the guys coming off monster seasons like that, like they typically, they're not really gonna like repeat it. You know what I mean? It's going to be very difficult to repeat a season like that. And I could easily see Hurts kind of dropping off a bit for sure. Like especially with the concerns that we talked about last week's spread with the Eagles. And the coaching staff there and losing the offensive coordinator and everything. And on top of that, Hurts is playing a more difficult schedule this year than they did last year, more difficult run schedule. And they're playing a bunch of defenses that play to the weaknesses of Hurts. So I'm not as high on Hurts this season as I was last season. But, I can still see him putting up a decent amount of fantasy points to put him in consideration with Josh Allen for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I could be wrong on that, but I figure something right when you're doing these preseason rankings, you got to take a stand, and I had Allen above Hurts.
Yep, totally makes sense.
Tyler, who'd you go with your third?
I went with my third pick was Amari Cooper. My fourth pick ended up being Christian Watson. It was just I looked at the receiver room. The running backs came off the board a little faster than I wanted them to, and I didn't want to reach down for a Najee or an Alexander Madison. Figured I can get one of those guys later or close to him. And you looked at the receivers, it was like Mike Williams was on the board, wasn't really sure on his health. Christian Watson's a big guy that Jordan Love's just going to air it out to. He could score a lot of touchdowns this year, so I'll take a shot on him there.
I would love to have some Darren Waller here, but because I did risk on Cup, I'm going to grab another wide receiver and take Deontay Johnson. You guys, or well, not you guys, but they grabbed you got Drake London. I really wanted one. I wanted Ayuk or Hopkins there, but I don't know, Tyler. What do you think of Deontay Johnson? I've had people go back and forth on him.
I think he's going to rebound from having one of the worst years I've ever seen a wide receiver have last year when it comes to scoring touchdowns. I mean, how many guys have that many catches and that many yards and just never see the end zone? Yeah. I think week one spread, write it down. The dude is plus 360 to score a touchdown week one. You'll never get that good of odds ever again on him. That will be a bet week one. Pickens should not have a higher touchdown odds than Deontay Johnson, who's going to see twice the targets.
I've seen Pickens go ahead of Johnson in a lot of drafts, and I just look at a target share. That's insane to me.
I get it from like the casual fans' point of view where they see guy jump over the defenders, catch these crazy passes. They think he's just going to go out and just do this every week. But
Yeah.
When you watch the games and know what's going to happen, it's like Deontay Johnson's going to be the guys that gets all the underneath targets, could break slants for 50-yard touchdowns. Like he's going to be the interesting guy on that offense.
And I did get my Darren Waller there in the next round. So now, Simon, you're at 1-0-3-0. How are you approaching this next pick?
I am looking at Dameon Pierce. There we go. He fell to me. I was a little bit worried that he might not fall to me, but I think Dameon Pierce has top 5 upside this year. He's going to be a 3-down back from all accounts in preseason. And, he put up all sorts of, advanced stats that showed that he had, definite potential upside for that top 5 upside. I think he was like second in the league in broken tackles or, forced broken tackles. And, he had some other really good stats there that really makes him stand out to me as one of those guys that you can draft in, like rounds 5 or 6 that could have that round 1 upside for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you. It was Pearson Waller for me on that last decision. But I have more Pearson Waller, and we're talking about evening out exposures. Early in July, I mean, Pierce was just like round 8, like money. I think if I go through my drafts, I think I took him in round 7 or round 8, like 12 to 14 drafts in a row before he moved up with the preseason usage. I think you're going to be happy with that pick.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get as much of him as possible. Like I was drafting him, probably like you were talking spread. Like what was he going in, like 7th, 8th round, like early on?
So, and the guys he was around, it was like Miles Sanders, Rashad White, James Conner, and it just felt to me like he was head and shoulders above some of those other guys there. He was getting drafted around David Montgomery to start. David Montgomery's the backup, and I'm getting the starter. And I know Houston's offense probably isn't going to be too good. Tyler, we talked about C.J. Stroud. That looks like it's going to be a rough transition for him. He definitely looks like a guy that's got all the talent and isn't necessarily playing quarterback yet. As far as my main thing is he's staring down his receivers, which you can't do at the NFL level.
Well, I mean, outside of him and Justin Fields, how many quarterbacks in the NFL go from a better wide receiver unit in college to a worse one in the NFL?
Yeah, and he specifically did that. The Alabama guys, right? Ohio State and Alabama guys, they might have a drop-off in their receivers. You're on the board, Tyler, 1-4-0-1-4-0. Bill, where are you going?
I think I got to go running back. Got to get another one of these guys, and I think I'm going to go J.K. Dobbins over James Cook. I'm not big on him. I think that injury hindered him a little bit more than people think. I don't think he has the burst he used to have. But James Cook could get played off the field by Damian Harris a lot easier than J.K.
He's got the limited upside. In each preseason game, they rolled with him all the way down the field, and then as soon as they got inside the 10, Damian Harris came in. So to me, that limits his upside. It seems clear that he's not in that red zone package, especially here on Underdog, where it's only half-point PPR and we're more touchdown hunting. I think you made the right call there. So
I almost reached down and went for Javonte Williams.
That's what Simon just took.
All I keep picturing in my head is Sean Payton loves those 2 running backs, using different running backs to offset each other. And I just keep picturing what P. Ryan was doing in Cincinnati, and I think he could do the same thing in Denver.
An interesting spot. Go ahead, Simon.
I was going to say my interest in Javonte is a lot of it has to do with the offensive coordinator over there. A couple years ago, when Lombardi was signed by the Chargers, I projected Austin Eckler to be a top 5 running back, and at that time he was going in like the 2nd, 3rd round, and you really saw the difference it made with Lombardi as offensive coordinator in that offense. They just started using all those dump offs to Eckler, and Eckler started getting a ton more work. And he ended up being, I think, number 2 on the season that year. I think he could have the same type of effect on the Denver backfield. I'm leaning towards Javonte Williams as being the beneficiary of that. I think Williams could for sure have at least a top 10 season this year if everything goes right. The coaching is so much better than it has been in the past, and like just with that offense, the offensive coordinator and how he likes to call his games, I think Williams could be a huge benefactor of that.
All right, I'm on the board, and I need a running back. And I don't really like any of these options.
I mean, with that group of guys, you just pull a name out of a hat.
It's either Montgomery or Rachaad White. Who do you like better, Tyler? I'll take your suggestion of those two.
I'd rather have Montgomery.
All right, Montgomery it is.
Just because there's news today about Tampa Bay's depth chart. There's a guy, Sean Tucker, who slides in at RB2 for Tampa Bay. He was pretty good in college. Don't be surprised if this guy starts to take work away from Rachaad White early in the season, and by the end of the season, he's RB1 there. So,
well, I'm glad I asked you because I was leaning towards Rachaad White off the usage, but we talked about Damian Harris taking some of those goal line touches. I do believe that Montgomery's going to take some of those goal line touches from Gibbs, and fairly good pass catcher as well for being a bigger guy. I like him a little more on DK, but yeah. All right. Well, I know where the weaknesses of this teams are. I'm definitely struggling there at running back. I feel like I ended up with T. Higgins, Deontay Johnson, and Zay Flowers. So, that Cooper Kupp is really just a dice roll. But boy, if I
it's a dice roll, it could win you a lot. So
yeah. So I mean, and that's what I'm going for at this point in the year. I have pretty good exposures on most of the guys I like, so I'm fine gambling with these late teams because I feel like the ADPs have settled in and they're sharp now.
I got to give a shout out to Bob Gomes, who was on a show with me a few weeks ago, and he was talking up Sean Tucker back then. I didn't even have him on my radar until Bob was talking about him. But yeah, like hearing that news today, I was like, oh well, Bob was right, man.
Yeah. Yeah, and I thought Rachaad White was going to be one of those James Conner things where even if they're bad, he was going to get so much workload.
That's another guy I'm starting to pull back on is James Conner. Because we keep saying to ourselves, Fred, he's going to get all the usage. He's going to get all the usage. What are they going to get in the red zone 4 times this year?
Got a lot of running backs on the board here. It looks like people are reaching for their wide receivers. My next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My next like 6 guys in my queue are running backs, which is interesting. I do like Rachaad White still. I think I like Khalil Herbert. Not so much better. What do you guys think of DeAndre Swift this year? How do you think that Philly backfield is going to play out?
I was high on him in the beginning of the year, but now I think he's being drafted too high.
It's just so hard to decipher that because it's like, could we watch him run like we just talked about James Cook? Could we watch DeAndre Swift get all the carries down the field and then Hurts does the little push right into the end zone every time? It's just hard to go. I think it's hard to take any of those running backs knowing Hurts is just going to vulture rushing touchdowns from you.
Yeah, and Rashad Penny did not end up getting cut. There was a lot of talk about him getting cut, and he's still with the team. So, I mean, all this talk about Gainwell and, like everybody liking Swift, it could end up being Penny that comes out of nowhere again, like he did in the beginning of the summer, and he ends up leading, being the lead running back on that team. Like
one thing that worries me there, Simon, is do you think he's cut if Trey Sermon doesn't hit the IR the last week of preseason? Because they loved him.
I don't think Trey Sermon's that good.
Yeah, I wasn't high on Sermon. Like like Tyler, what was your info on Sermon there? Because I know he'd been talked up a little bit, but I never really bought into it. But what is your opinion on him?
I mean, I wasn't very high on him either. I just seen all the news that said they loved him. They loved the burst he was giving. And then everything you read said that they did not love Penny. They didn't see much burst in his running. So they just kind of stayed away from him. But then the Sermon injury happens right in that last preseason game, and it's almost like they looked around and they were like, well, we'll just keep him on because we like to have 4 to 5 running backs on this roster at a time. So he goes on IR. Penny stays. I think it could be one of those ones where 6 weeks in, if you don't see much of Penny on the field in those 6 weeks, Sermon's activated from the IR and Penny's cut.
Now with Penny and that burst, because I saw a clip of him and he looked like he was running through mud, like trying to get through a hole. And with him, like coming off of an injury last year, an injury shortened season, like how much of that do we think is him recovering from that injury, and how much of that do we think is actually like permanent now? Like, do we think he's completely lost it, or is it like a recovery thing? Do you think?
I think he might have lost it. My biggest worry is ever since he's even touched an NFL field, he's gotten broken in half almost every season. I think those injuries are just starting to pile up too much. What do you think, Spread?
I think when it comes to the Eagles running backs, I think ADP-wise, Kenneth Gainwell's the guy to target because I feel like you have close to the same upside as the Swift and the Penny, and he's the last one coming off the board. But really, I feel like we're guessing. I feel like we can have an Eagles beat writer on the show with us right now, and I don't think we'd even get much more insight than what we do. I think that he's going to ride the hot hand. I'm up here real quick. Boy, Rashad Bateman's looking good, but I already have Zay Flowers.
You know, right, I'm going to throwing Slant Boy a bunch of passes.
I'm going to take Brian Robinson.
I thought you were.
Oh yeah, but just that the Eagles guy I've been drafting is Kenneth Gainwell, and it's not off any knowledge or insight. It's just the fact that I feel like they all have similar upside, and I'm getting them last.
Yeah, I've been drafting a bunch of Gainwell too, Spread. I'm with you on that one. I did hear a beat writer who appeared on Establish the Run podcast, and they were talking about the situation. Like he was talking about how Gainwell was getting most of the reps in practice because they were practicing 2-minute drills and end of the half drills. So that had me like a little bit concerned. But then like a week later, I saw another beat writer saying, "Hey, Gainwell's the guy." So it's all over the place with the reporting on that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Even I don't think the beat writers even know. And to take it that farther, I don't even know if the offensive coordinator even knows. It could be just a game by game. This guy's got the juice today. He's doing well. And then, so that's why that one's so tough. Although, we talked about getting it right and taking those stands. Maybe getting that right there with the Swift or a Penny as we're all passing them over for quote-unquote safer picks. That could be, the reason we're out of the playoffs or, we don't win our pod because if one of them does emerge as the clear number one, you're getting the number one in an elite offense. And let's just say they say, you know what, we're not going to overuse Hurts this year. Last year, we needed to make a statement, but now we've established ourselves as a championship team, and it's playoffs or bust. They talk about Andy Reid always leaving plays. There's plays he will not run until the playoffs, right? And they practice them all year. Do the Eagles adopt a more conservative format, especially with the one player they can't afford to lose, and that's Jalen Hurts?
I wouldn't be surprised, like Swift, would be in a perfect situation. You would think if that were to happen, if they were to, kind of keep Hurts in bubble wrap throughout the season and, give them more of a passing game for the running backs. But I could totally see, Swift benefiting from a situation like that. And you got to figure there's a reason why they would have brought Swift in. Why would they bring in, like a guy with that skill set, traded like a 4th round pick for him or whatever. And, like just to bring a guy like that in and not use his skill set, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
And of course the counter argument is, why would Detroit let him go for just a 4th rounder if he was that good and draft a new quarterback? And looking into that, it seemed to be that they were complaining that he missed a lot of the holes, and they felt that Swift was just kind of freelancing out there, and that they expect Jahmyr Gibbs to be even more effective. So I wonder if the Philly staff will also have that problem with them, which is another reason I'm fine gambling on Gainwell. Because it's weird watching the games. I never noticed that. I always thought Swift was really good. But hearing the coaching staff say that, obviously they know a lot more than me, right? They know the plays they're supposed to be running.
He might also just like running through holes for Detroit and running through holes for Philly is just going to be two completely different things.
That's a good point. Although Detroit's offensive line ended up being pretty good.
Oh, their offensive line is really good, but Philly is the cream of the crop when it comes to offensive lines.
Good point.
Like it might be flat out impossible to miss the running holes playing for Philly now. Like they might just be wide open for him.
Yeah.
So if you're looking right now, I'm looking at the depth chart on ESPN. They have it as Swift, Penny, Gainwell. But I saw, like a depth chart just the other day that had it like Gainwell, Penny, Swift. And I think they had Boston Scott
around
here
somewhere. Yep.
He only plays against the Giants, though.
Yeah, Scott. I'm telling you, like Scott was number 3 on that depth chart, like ahead of Swift. So it's just like these depth charts are all over the place, and spread to your point. There's been lots of those ambiguous backfields like this that have decided, seasons for this kind of stuff. So ambiguous backfields are the ones that you want to target, and you want to try to get it right. You want to go heavier on, like one player in that backfield. You and I have both been making Gainwell that player. And if we're right about it, it could have a huge payoff for us.
Yeah, that's for sure. So I short up my tight end a little bit with David Njoku there, and then short up that running back position because I started late on it. I went Hero, and then I got Montgomery, Robinson, and McKinnon. I'm hoping to get some of these in there. I was debating a quarterback instead of McKinnon, but I think with the way that I built this team, I'm gambling. By taking Kupp already, I'm gambling. So I'm going to be fine and gamble that Daniel Jones makes that next step that I expect him to make in the second year of the offense with the better weapons there. So I'll ride Daniel Jones, and I'll probably end up – now I've kind of put myself for correlation. I think the guy I want now is going to be Pickett because I have Deontay Johnson. So –
come into a Mike Tomlin team spread? No way.
I know, huh?
I will say the quarterbacks have thinned out quick in this draft. Usually you'll see like Aaron Rodgers will still be on the board around 130 and guys like that. Right now, the best player on the board is Jared Goff. So there's probably about two quarterbacks, maybe 3 quarterbacks more off the board at this point than I'm used to, like when I'm looking at it. So I'm starting to think.
Did you notice that this weekend the quarterbacks were flying off the board, and I think it's the influx of the casual that are just going to make 4 or 5 teams.
Yeah, probably. And running backs too. I noticed at the top, like running backs are getting taken generally pretty quickly too. But
that's the old school drafters showing up.
Yeah, or just the home league guys. I mean, that's what threw me off. I did 2 or 3 home league drafts, and when the running backs are just flying off the board in the first round, I'm not used to that. So probably those guys coming in there too that have been playing for years, and Pickett's off the board. Goff is gone.
Wow, Pickett went that early.
These new guys, they love their QBs.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is if you're just coming into drafting now and you haven't been drafting all summer, like you feel like you're in the twilight zone because you got quarterbacks coming off in the second, third round. You got multiple quarterbacks coming off in the first, second, third round. You never see that. You got all the wide receivers are at the top of the draft. You got running backs that would normally be in round 1 getting pushed down to like round 4, 5, 6. So it's a crazy drafting season. So these guys are probably like coming into this like like completely like just shell shocked,
Yeah, for sure. So maybe there'll be an advantage here. I'm at 1.442. I originally was going to go quarterback here. I'm fine letting these guys slip. I guess my new guy to target now would be since I'm going all in on this whole Cooper Cup deal, would be Stafford, but I definitely can get him later. So I'm pretty free to go anywhere I want here. Hey, let's take the guy that we've been talking about.
I was about to say, there's the name we've been talking about.
Right on the board. That ended up being a no-brainer. And I'll just go ahead and increase my exposure there. But Simon, I'll tell you what, I'm trying to really diversify my exposure in the first 10 rounds. And at this point, I'm fine just taking stands and just picking the same guys every time. Right? I feel like the top 10, you definitely want to diversify your exposure because those guys are most likely all going to be good. And it comes down to health and opportunities. But down here, I'm fine just going ahead and just kind of drafting my same olds. Because this could be the difference here. If we're getting this Gainwell pick right, or, I'm getting a lot of Jerick McKinnon, or I'm looking at other guys on the board that I'm high on. Like, I like Roshan Johnson a lot. I like Tyjae Spears. I mean, he looks really good. I just doesn't seem – I don't understand why when Tyjae Spears is running like that they would be trying to get a little more in there. So I guess I could play it safe with quarterback here. I don't think Stafford gets back around to me, although he is at 174 ADP. But we've noticed that these quarterbacks have been going higher. If I miss out on Stafford, I have to go Tannehill or one of the rookies or Jimmy.
You got 3 quarterbacks still in front of them, so
yeah,
it's tough though.
I'm gonna take him right now. I feel pretty good about where I am. Otherwise, I mean, I guess I can get some more wide receivers here. But the way I built this team, I think I'm going to have tight end and running back in my flex more often than a usual team that I built.
I feel like I'm way more balanced in this draft than I typically am. Usually I feel like I have too much of underexposure to one position, but this one I feel like I'm pretty balanced. And I ended up grabbing Russell Wilson just because I had already Javonte and Cortland Sutton on my team. So, for the sake of correlation, like I just grabbed him there. That's like a perfect example of how I get a little bit of diversity in my lineups. Like I haven't taken any like Russell Wilson really. It's not because I don't think that he could have a decent season. It's just like I get my guys usually. I'm in the same mindset as Spread. Like when we get to these rounds, I'm typically taking guys that like I think are undervalued, and like I don't really focus too much on diversifying when you get past round 10 or whatever. I'm more interested in getting the guys that like I feel like have a chance, because like a lot of these guys obviously in 10 through 18 are just going to be scrubs, like you're not going to get like anything out of them. So you got to kind of pick the guys that you think are going to have the best chance for those spike weeks and just kind of get as much exposure to them as possible, because you're diversifying your early picks, like throughout these drafts, and then you kind of stay consistent with your later picks, and that gives you the potential to push through a bunch to advance to the next round while giving you a decent amount of diversity, like with your top players on your teams.
Yeah, I'd have to agree there. How's this quarterback room looking now? So Carr's gone, Purdy, Howell. It'd be interesting to see if he would have made it. Since I'm the one with Cup, I can't see myself. A lot of other people having a lot of interest in him.
One name still on this board I wanted to ask you guys about.
Yeah.
What are you guys doing with Zeke? Because we all know his role in New England he's just going to steal touchdowns from Ramondre.
Yeah, I'm taking him. Like if I'm thin at running back and he's showing up on the board, I'll take him. Like I won't even hesitate, because like if I'm trying to get my 5th or 4th running back and I know what's coming after Zeke is a bunch of garbage, pretty much. So I'll just suck it up and draft him because we know that he has that upside. We know that if the Patriots brought him in, it was for for a reason, like and they always tend to use more than one running back in that offense. And we know that there's already been a bunch of talk about how they wanted to lighten the load on Ramondre this season. And when they brought in Zeke, that told me exactly what you just said, Tyler, that he's going to be in there poaching those touchdowns, So I think he does have, standalone value, especially where he's going in drafts right now. And considering what comes after him for your options at running back, I think it makes a lot of sense to just, hold your nose and get exposure to him. Like it's not gonna hurt you. Versus other running backs that you could take in that spot, but it could definitely end up having some upside and help you out, I think.
Yeah, I'm not as high on him, but the thing is, at his draft position, it's really hard to argue against him. Right? Because it's not like you're spending a premium pick on him. Like you said, I'm not that high on him, but the opportunity cost is so low. Like, I mean, what are you missing out on? Devin Singletary? Yeah. I mean, right? I mean,
Jeff Wilson, who's already on the IR. It's like
yeah.
Keandre Miller, who's running back 3 in New Orleans once Kamara shows back up.
Exactly. Deion Jackson is who I was taking, and now it comes out that Zach Moss is looking like the potential starter in that Indy offense. So,
which is weird to me. He's terrible.
Yeah,
it's weird.
Yeah, he's coming off of a broken arm. He's coming off a broken arm. He didn't play for like a good portion of the preseason, at least the last 4 to 6 weeks. And now they're talking him up like he's a starter. Deion Jackson last year had a couple 100-yard rushing games, and Moss didn't do anything. So yeah, I don't understand how they decide these decisions. But all right, I'm going to draft Peoples-Jones here. Peoples-Jones is going pretty late in these drafts. I just drafted him in the 15th round. I know Cedric Tillman. Some people are thinking that Tillman was drafted to be Peoples-Jones' replacement, but we saw some decent flashes out of Peoples-Jones last year, and historically we've seen decent flashes out of him the past few years. So I don't know why all of a sudden like everybody hates him, and I don't know why everyone thinks that Tillman's just going to take over that role. It's like that classic situation where they bring in like a rookie wide receiver. Everybody thinks the wide receiver is going to take over, and then the veteran ends up starting throughout the season, having a decent year. You know what I mean? Like I like Tillman. I like grabbing him late, especially when I have Watson lineups. But I'm not going to shy away from Peoples-Jones out of fear, for Tillman for sure.
I like Peoples-Jones a lot.
Yeah,
especially in this where you're not. You just ride the spikes, and then where you've got them, you don't need them to produce every week. And I think the spike potential is so there. Every time they double Amari, or if Njoku ends up being the player that we expect him to be, he's going to get a lot of advantageous matchups. And Watson's definitely got the arm to get it right. I mean, I could see plenty of games, 3 touchdowns. I mean, 3 receptions, 100-something yards, and 2 touchdowns. Right? I mean, just those game-breaking plays.
I mean, I remember like reading that Watson and Peoples-Jones had a decent chemistry together too. So that's another thing. Like I don't understand like where like the hate on Peoples. Last year I think he was going probably in like the 10th, 11th round, and this year he's down to like the 15th. So he's gone down after having somewhat of a breakout year last year. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But I'm just going to take him.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think he being down is being down on Deshaun Watson. That has to be it, right? Because there's nothing that he did to knock him down these boards the way they were. Tyler, you're at 2661. Are we going to see a tight end from you?
Yep, we're getting a tight end right here unless he goes in front of me.
Is it Irv Smith?
Nope, it is not Irv Smith. It's a guy we talked about, Tyler Conklin.
I like it.
Oh, wow. Okay. Even Irv Smith on the board. If I would like Irv Smith.
I have enough
already
Irv
fill
Smith.
up my tight end.
Now, that was my guy in July. It'd be like round 17. It's like, let me get my second tight end. Oh, Irv Smith.
I think that's a great spot here. I might be looking at just getting Tannehill right here. He's always my last guy in here. Although I didn't get any correlation here. Is there any some correlation I should be looking
My
at?
pick before Conklin, I went with a real gamble I think could pay off in Justin Ross. If that dude stays healthy, people forget in that wide receiver class that had Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase and all these guys, Justin Ross was the third name that was supposed to come off those boards if it wasn't for that injury that happened. So if he can stay healthy, he's going to be a stud.
Yeah, and someone's going to have to get those targets. And imagine how much his share goes up if Kelsey misses just a small amount of time.
Not even
I'm
just
pretty happy with my team. I'm going to grab some Tannehill here. Assuming Peach Suplex doesn't take him, and he did not. He took Chuba Hubbard.
All right, so I'm looking at I've got a 3 tight end build right now. If this was drafters, like drafters, you get and DraftKings, you get 20 rounds. I wouldn't mind taking a 4th tight end, just because tight end gets really thin during the season. You may think that you're all set at tight end, but then all of a sudden, like you're hurt. Like that happens a lot to me. I can't tell you how many times I've been burnt by tight end injuries during the season. So I don't mind drafting 3, 4 tight ends depending which platform you're playing on.
Yeah. I want to do a little more drafters. I wish I would have got in there earlier.
You get in there today, because for every 5 that you draft today, you're going to get a free entry.
Oh, there
So
we go.
if you so if you're going to take advantage of it now, today's the day to do it. They ran it all throughout Labor Day weekend, and I was drafting a ton on drafters throughout Labor Day weekend. And it was supposed to end yesterday, but they had their servers froze, so they extended it a day. So you got the rest of the day.
Okay, that's good news. I didn't know about that.
Yep.
There goes Sean Tucker off the board.
And
Last pick of the 16th round.
Yeah. All right. I'm just a wide receiver, running back. That's all I'm picking here. I'm probably going to grab Darius. Okay, he's here. I'll grab some Darius Slayton. That gives me some more Giants correlation. So I didn't correlate as well as I did when we drafted last time. But I do have Stafford Cup, which isn't bad. And now I have Jones, Waller, and then the great part about Jones, we talked about this last time, right? I can grab Hodgins and Slayton here in these late rounds. So I still have some wide receiver correlation, but I still have the studs that I want, the T. Higgins, Deontay Johnson, Zay Flowers. So, yeah, this is definitely a boomer bust team I'm feeling. I feel like my last team was safer that we did together, Simon. I feel I really swung for the fences here, but there could be a strikeout here if Cooper Kupp is deactivated.
Who do you guys like between Sherfield and Shakir real quick? Sorry to interrupt you, Spread. I'm just.
I like Shakir.
I like Shakir also.
Shakir? Yeah, I like him too.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Sherfield was getting a little bit of buzz and had me a little worried because I've been drafting a decent amount of Shakir.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I'm glad you guys like him too. So
my next pick's going to be solely based on injury history, and I think that the 2 of the 3 guys in front of him probably go down at some point this year.
So with my team, I ended up drafting a decent amount of Broncos on this team. I'm looking at it now. I went with trying to get that correlation in there. I don't hate the Broncos this year. The coaching staff obviously is improved. I think with the situation with Dolchik, you got Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy is what's his injury status now? Wasn't he supposed to be out initially, and now it's looking like he's going to be back in?
Yeah, I think he's still questionable.
Questionable.
For week 1.
Yeah,
it's a lot better
kind of
though.
weird.
We thought that he might miss 8 weeks at one point.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, that's definite improvement. But I do still think, he's obviously like injury risk throughout the season. But like Denver's lost a ton of their receivers just in the preseason. So I think a guy like Dolchik, he was getting talked down a lot because people were saying that Adam Troutman was getting like most of the first team rep. And I think those are the perfect examples of like maybe some of the preseason stuff getting a little bit overblown. We've seen Dolchik's talent, and we've seen him have a connection with Russell Wilson when he was playing late in the season last year. And this season, he's coming in with a full offseason under his belt. He's coming in with that, like that OC that likes the short game, like in the passing. And it's a matter of whether or not Russell Wilson buys in. But Russell Wilson's already shown a chemistry with Dolchik. And Dolchik now is going, he's going pretty late. He's going like 170 ADP compared to where he was earlier in the season. I think he was probably in the like 130s range. So he kind of fell off a cliff, and put him at a value where he seems like he's a pretty decent ADP value. And I've been trying to take him as much as I can lately.
Spread. Remember for like a week we were playing. Remember we were playing that game for like a week spread with the drafts. It was how far could Dolchich fall?
Yes, he was dropping.
Yeah. Have you guys been drafting him at all, or are you guys shying away from him?
I had so much of him earlier. I was so high on the Broncos to start. That was my favorite late stack. And then when I saw that first preseason game, I said, I have enough Broncos exposure.
My biggest worry about them is they didn't sign Jarrett Stidham to stand on the sideline and just hold a clipboard and give him $10 million. Like he is there he is there as the safety valve. If Sean Payton doesn't like what Russ looks like in the first 3 weeks, you bet your ass he's going to pull him off that field and put Jarrett Stidham out there.
All right, so here's the question. Do I go with Hunter Renfrow, or do I grab a third Giants wide receiver?
I'd go with the Giants wide receiver.
Yeah.
All right. Paris Campbell?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right. Paris Campbell, because he's missed a lot of the preseason, but or has he missed the preseason? Like what's the deal with Campbell? I haven't heard too much about him this offseason. He's usually hurt in the offseason, but I don't know what his situation is.
He's supposed to be the starting slot, but there's been a lot of competition for that, and that's definition of a boomer bust pick, I would say at this point.
Yeah, starting I think pretty much all their receivers are like slot receivers, aren't they? Like they got a bunch of slot receivers. So if he's getting the starting nod over all those other dudes, like that's a good situation.
And he might just start, and he might tail off as some of these guys get better.
Yeah.
So.
All right, guys. So.
Go ahead, Simon.
So we just wrapped up. Just remind people again, please subscribe to the YouTube page at Heat Seeker Sports, and give a like on this video. And right now we'll take a look at our teams. Tyler, why don't you go first? Why don't you go over your team and tell us what you like and what you don't like about it?
Yeah, I went with the quarterback spots a little earlier than I like to. I went with Watson and Dak. That was just due to the board, the way it played out. All the quarterbacks were coming off the board. Had some of the wide receivers for those guys. Just wanted those quarterbacks when I could get them and didn't want to wait and get the bottom of the barrel quarterbacks. Running backs, I went a little earlier than I expected. I took Pollard in the second round, took Dobbins at pick 64, came back with Pacheco at 81, got some Zach Charbonnet from Seattle. I think he could eat into Walker's usage. Got him at pick 105. Got a late Damian Harrison, Zeke at 136 and 160. I think both of those guys are just going to eat touchdowns. So love getting those two guys late. Love my wide receiver room, though. CeeDee Lamb at pick 9, Amari Cooper, Christian Watson, Scary Terry, Michael Gallup, Justin Ross, Josh Palmer, and Richie James. Those last three names could be very off the board, but I think Justin Ross could be a stud if he stays healthy. Josh Palmer has Keenan Allen and Mike Williams in front of him who are both made of glass. We've seen him play a lot last year. He could be on the field. And for Richie James, these receivers that sit in the middle of the field and find the open space, you're telling me that's not going to be Mahomes' best friend while Kelsey's gone? I think James could be his number one weapon week 1. So love that. And went a little younger in the tight end room. Went Sam Laporta, the rookie for Detroit, to get a little bit of that Detroit-Dallas stack. And then went Conklin late to get the other tight end. So team's a little thin at the tight end and the quarterback spot. Wish I'd have got one more guy there, but not too bad, I'd say.
Yeah, I like it. Spread. How do you end up?
Yeah, we talk about certain teams, like for example, the Green Bay Packers. Tyler, when we did our preview, we said it all comes down to one man, Jordan Love. Right? If Jordan Love is good, the Packers are set up for a fantastic season. My team is the same way, I feel, because it all comes down to this risk I took in round 2. The opportunity cost I left on the board there was enormous. But, we're a guy that's 2 seasons away from being the top fantasy scorer in the league and was on pace to be the top scorer last year before the injury. So he's a target monster. I drafted extra wide receivers with the idea that I am going to miss weeks with him, but I got to stay alive and try and make it to the playoffs. And maybe if the Rams are exceeding expectations at that point, I don't think I correlated as well this time, but I do have Stafford to go with the Cup. So if that little experiment works out, but I love my Daniel Jones correlation. I didn't get any correlation with my third. Maybe I should have passed on Njoku and grabbed some Chingakonkwu, but I've done that combination so much. I'm fine kind of having a naked Tannehill. And I went the classic hero RB build where I have McCaffrey, but then I think these other guys are going to be slotting in and out here with David Montgomery, Brian Robinson, Jerick McKinnon, Kenneth Gainwell. In a managed league, none of these guys I'd want to be starting every week and leave the others on the bench, but that's why we love this best ball format. I'm hoping to ride some spikes from these men. And maybe I should have gone 6 running backs and 2 tight ends, but I feel with tight end they get injured so often. I don't want my tight end, one to get injured, the other's on a bye week. I eat a 0 there. So I always go for the 3 tight end build. So if Cup's healthy, I feel pretty confident here at the end of the year. If not, I'll write this draft off and root for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how, like I said earlier, how many times an injured tight end has been the reason for not advancing, like just missing 1 week when your one tight end is on a bye and your other tight end is hurt. Like it happens more often than you would think, especially with that position and being a onesie position there. My team, I ended up drafting Josh Allen and Russell Wilson. For running backs, I went with Dameon Pierce, Javonte Williams, 2 guys that I think have top 5 to top 10 upside. Rashad White, Devon Achane, and Tajay Spears. I like both those rookies, man. I loved how Spears looked in the preseason. He looked like a beast. And I like Achane's situation right now being the backup to Mostert. And Mostert is about as delicate as you can get for a running back. And that dude, could get out in the first run he takes this season. And Achane finds himself as the lead back in this backfield. Jeff Wilson's already hurt, and Salvin Ahmed is the only other competition there. But I mean, Ahmed's a legitimate threat to this entire backfield that I think is going a little bit overlooked, because we've seen him in the past have some decent performances. And, with a team like this, you never know like who they're going to decide to ride in this backfield. For wide receivers, I have Stephon Diggs, Devontae Smith, Drake London, Cortland Sutton, Romeo Doubs, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Khalil Shakir, and Josh Downs. I went heavy at wide receiver at the top of this draft because I know I can get that value with guys like Dameon Pierce and Javonte Williams if I hold on just a little bit. And for tight end, I ended up with Evan Ingram, Greg Dulcich, and Irv Smith. So I feel like overall, I drafted a pretty balanced team. I got my correlation with the Broncos in there. I got my Diggs to Josh Allen correlation too. Didn't even consider week 17, like even though that was like our theme of this show. I didn't even like have it in consideration when I was drafting this team. I just didn't focus on it, but I feel pretty good about how I ended up. And, it's a decent team. I can't remember.
I like your team. That's an ideal first 3 rounds.
Yeah,
I just feel each pick is very, very safe.
Yeah. Those first couple, the Diggs Allen stack, I love.
Yeah, and you throw Devontae in there, who we've already said will get more targets than AJ Brown this year. Yep. I mean, Tyler, when we did the preview, his completion total, it was 11 or 12 higher, and his yardage total was higher than AJ Brown. The only thing that AJ Brown exceeded him in was touchdowns. But in this game, we target targets.
Yep.
Not right. And so the opportunity that is there, I think, for him to exceed his ADP far more than AJ Brown. And of course, that's going at 25 and 9. But I feel like you're getting wide receiver 1 potential, even though everyone hasn't listed it. Wide receiver 2.
Yeah, and one thing with Allen to Diggs too is, it hasn't fallen to me a whole lot this year. Even because I'm not going to reach for Allen in the second round. So I'm basically, if I'm drafting Diggs, I'm waiting for Allen to fall to me in the third round, which is tough to do because usually you're getting Diggs in the 6 or 7 spot, and you're having to wait to see if 6 or 7 people in the third round are going to pass on him on Josh Allen before he has a chance to get to you. And so he fell to me in this one. So I saw the opportunity to add that stack into my portfolio. So I just
and you were basically able to take advantage of the fact that Kupp and Kelsey, who have been top 10 picks for us all summer, are now out of the first round.
That's another thing too.
I think that you were able to do that. So we were all saying, hey, July is the time to draft, right? Well, there's still some advantages to drafting here right now, and I think you being able to get Allen and Diggs without using your first 2 picks, which was something I was having to do to make those stacks in July. So there's still an edge here, even though some of these ADPs I think are a lot sharper.
Yeah, and think of how late this happened too. We are on Tuesday. We are 2 days away from opening kickoff of the season, and we're still having draft altering news happen right now. So if you're still drafting, if you're still trying to get all your drafts in right now, like you're still in decent shape. Like you're not in bad shape if you were concerned that you lost out on a bunch of value earlier on in the summer. I'm actually finding that I like my teams that I'm drafting a lot more this season, like having gotten off to a late start than I did last season. So yeah, I think there's definitely, and we've talked about it last week, spread a edge to drafting a little later in the season, especially this year.
Yeah, I think at this point we're just trying to leverage that injury news like I did with Kupp. I mean, he could be, say he goes at his original ADP, which is around 4. If he's the 4th best player in the league and I got him in the second round, my team's going to be really good. So I feel like that's kind of my thing for drafting late. And we saw it with a couple other players, right? As people shied away from Judy, if he's okay, right? People were getting him in the 10th round. So maybe, negatively trying to leverage some of this injury news where everyone's shying away from a guy. I mean, I talked to you about Breece Hall dropping from the 30s to the 50s. Just up my exposure huge because I was so happy. And I noticed he's kind of evening out in this draft. He was not available there. He went closer to his summertime ADP. But it's almost reverse of what we're doing right now, where we're going against the injury news. And even with Kelsey, right? I mean, someone got him today. If he only misses 1 week and it's just a monster for 16 weeks, they're going to be pretty happy with round 2 Travis Kelsey.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, where can the people follow you guys? Tyler, where are you on X? Where can they find you?
Yeah, it's at th412_. And then for the YouTube channels, we'll be doing videos on the Sports Cake channel, and we'll be doing some shows over on Fanspeak as of right now. And of course, over here at Heat Seeker, definitely subscribe to all 3 of those channels. Find a bunch of good information on best ball and betting. You'll even have some free bets on those sites. So definitely subscribe to all 3 of those sites.
Yeah, for sure. Spread.
All right. Yeah, we're doing a ton of content, obviously, right, for Bookmakers Review. I do the shows with Tyler that he just mentioned. And one other fun thing that we've done, if you live in the Houston, Texas area, the Wagering World, which is a show that we've done on YouTube, We're on ESPN 97.5 Friday nights at 7 p.m. Pretty happy. I'm 1-0 now in my ESPN appearances as I took the USC over last week, but that will probably be my last dalliance into college ball. I just did it because there's no NFL for us to bet this week. But if you're in the Houston area, make sure you check that out. ESPN 97.5 on Friday nights, 7 p.m. The wagering world has moved to ESPN, and we're really happy about that. But just follow me at Spread a Stare. Tyler, my guess is that as the season goes on, we might be in even more places. And, of course, Simon, we expect to come back and do some more content with you here on Heat Seeker Sports. So there's a lot of great information available. So hopefully the listeners are taking advantage of all this.
Awesome. Yeah, and I definitely look forward to doing some stuff with you guys this season. Make sure to check out at Heat Seeker Sports over on X. I'm at PumaCom over on X. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Subscribe to these guys and their YouTube channels. And we will see you next time. I'll be producing some showdown content here very soon. We got the first game coming in 2 days, so I'm going to start breaking down the matchup and the DraftKings prices and see which captains I like. And I'll put out a video for that very shortly. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.